Hi, my name is Anish Desikant, and I'm going to be talking to you about Global Game Jam Next Jamming, and specifically the improvisation and icebreakers involved in the jamming process. So what exactly are improvisation and icebreakers, and why do we need them? To sum it up in 2 words, these are really just introduction games. They get people more comfortable with each other. So the reason we really want to stress these is that people can be shy or afraid to meet other people, and these games can make everyone feel just more comfortable. It can make it easier to find and make new friends. It can make it easier to ideate, and it can also make it easier to form teams when it comes to that point in jamming. When do you want to play these games? The icebreaker game should be played as soon as possible after all participants have entered the game jam and standard intros are done. And what that means is as soon as the game jam has started and everyone is in the room, these games should be played to make everyone feel more comfortable with each other. Improv games should be played during the ideation phase of jamming, and the reason for this is that improv games really help bring out new ideas. Often, it's easier to do these games at the same time because you're already split up into groups and you can do these activities together. So here are some icebreaker games to get everyone more comfortable with each other. One of them is called Two Truths and a Lie. And what happens is each person tells 3 stories. One of them is actually a lie and the other 2 are truths. And the object of the game is to guess which is the lie. So basically you get into groups, and the group size can be anything from 3 to 20, whatever you feel is most appropriate. And everyone sort of goes around in a circle and they say 2 truths and 1 lie, and everyone else has to guess which one is the lie. This is a really simple way for people to start talking to each other and get to know a little bit more about each other. Another great icebreaker game is called Tell Me a Story. In this game, participants get into small groups of 3 to 6, and they begin to create a story collaboratively. So one person begins the story with 4 words, and the next person will continue the story with the next 4 words. And this continues on and is very difficult to make comprehensive sentences, but is a really great way to get people laughing and more comfortable with each other. Some other icebreakers include standard introductions. For example, you can ask people to state their name, what they're interested in doing or learning at the game jam, and one interesting fact about them. And just this simple introduction can sometimes be enough to get people more comfortable with each other. Another important thing to do is to have random groups. Don't let people choose their own groups because then they'll just end up being with friends that they already know. So in these random groups, they can introduce themselves and start talking about what some of their favorite games are, and this will get the ball rolling into how comfortable they feel with each other. Now let's talk about improvisation games, and a lot of these games will be inspired from the TV show Whose Line Is It Anyway, which is an improv show. And as you can see from this image, it's really fun and it gets people very, very comfortable with each other and laughing. But the cool thing is, not only does it make people more comfortable with each other and have fun, but it also brings out some great ideas that wouldn't otherwise come out. One of these games is called Yes and basically people get into small groups and they begin to create a story similar to the other game. However, they're focusing on building a game and creating and ideating on what their game is going to be like. So in this example, player 1 will say, the game involves going to Mexico. Player 2 says, yes, and the main character is stranded on a deserted beach. And then the next player says, yes, and she has to find all the treasure chests buried in the sand. And then back to player 1, he says, yes, and once she has enough gold, she can, and it goes on and on and on. And through doing this, you've sort of created a game very quickly and rapidly, and you've brought about new ideas to inspire other creative games as well. Another game is called Questions Only, and in this game, It's similar to yes and, but the restriction is that you can only use questions. So for example, player 1 will say, "Why was Sally in Mexico?" Player 2 will say, "Didn't you know she got stranded on a deserted beach?" Player 3 says, "Did you hear that she found a ton of treasure there?" And then player 1 says again, "Well, what did she do with that treasure?" And so asking these questions really makes people think, and it's really difficult to play this game, but this restriction is fun and also brings about great ideas. And then a final game is called Scenes from a Hat and variations of this game. In Whose Line Is It Anyway, the host, Drew Carey, has a hat with a bunch of pieces of paper that have different ideas and restrictions written on them. And based on what that paper says, the performers have to act out some sort of scene. However, you can do the same thing in game design by having these pieces of paper that create restrictions in your design, and then you have to create a game based on that. So, for example, to the right you'll see game design improv. In the next 15 minutes, design a game involving teamwork and combat using only a plastic figure shaped like a spaceship, 20-sided dice, 6-sided dice, and paper and pencils. So these restrictions really help participants create new ideas, because although they're creating more restrictions, sometimes that lets people be more creative. The link to a tool that helps you create these restrictions is here in thinkingclockwise.com. So some final thoughts about improvisation and icebreakers. The goal is really that everyone should feel comfortable, empowered, and excited. Everyone should have a better idea of who they want to work with and what they want to work on. And this really helps in the pitching and team formation stages, when participants will pitch their favorite ideas and form teams that they really want to work with. If all of this is done effectively, the game jam will be much more successful, much more fun, and will produce much better results. Thank you for listening to this lesson, and I hope you learned something from it.